Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is that time. It has been far too long. 30th of November was the last time I sat down with Reece and Jack for episode 10 of Gills in the Pub. So tonight we are bringing you episode 11, a plethora of things to get through from Stephen Clemence, League Two, January business, plenty more. Gents, we good?
All good, thanks, mate.
Looking forward to this one, no doubt. We think we might argue on this one, which should be quite nice for a change. It's all been a bit nicey nice so far, hasn't it? So
I don't know about argue, mate, but there might be. I don't know. I'll probably be broadly in line for you guys.
Come on, I'm trying to big it up. Everyone's just turned off. Right, as I said, 30th of November was the last time we sat down and had a chat. So you're going back about 3 months. At the time, I think Stephen Clemence had only been in situ for around about 4 weeks. So at the time, there was no way we could pass judgment on his reign as Gillingham manager, having replaced Neil Harris. But in the ensuing 3 months, his record stands in League Two only, because there has only been 2 cup fixtures in that time. That was a 2-0 win against Charlton in the FA Cup, a very good performance, and then a 4-0 reverse in exactly the same competition. But League Two record: played 17, won 6, drawn 5, lost 6, scored 17, conceded 19, points 23, points per game overall 1.35, equates to 62 over a full season. I've had a quick look, gents. If you go back over the last 3 full campaigns in League Two, that would make you finish 9th last season, 12th the season before, and 11th in 2021. All lower than when Stephen Clemence was appointed. Reece, I'll come to you first.
Where do we go? Where do we go? Listen, I'm not. No matter what I say, I'm not going to sit here saying let's remove Stephen Clemence at this point in time, because that'd be ridiculous at this stage of proceedings. But truthfully, I'm not entirely convinced by what I'm seeing. When he first come in, whilst I think results have been patchy from the start of his tenure up until now, at the start I could kind of see what he was trying to do. We had that game up at Tranmere where we got whacked, but we made sort of 600 odd passes, and you could see that it looks like he's trying to make us very possession based, and you could see whether it was working or not, an idea of what he wanted to do. But we're now sort of 3 months further down the line, and I sort of don't really know what our approach is from week by week at the moment, which is probably the most worrying thing for me. Which, don't get me wrong, if he's coming trying to play a certain style when after 5 or 6 games he's thought, maybe I've got this wrong, and sort of in League Two level this isn't going to work, I suppose you have to say fair play to him for trying to find different solutions. But at the moment, I don't think them solutions have been found. He's still new, but I think in all competitions he's had 21 games now, so I don't think it's unreasonable to have expected that we perhaps would have seen a little bit more than we have done so far.
Totally agree, but I'll let Jack take the floor before I give my 2 pence worth, because I think Jack has been the one between the 3 of us in our WhatsApp chat that's probably been the most lenient with Stephen Clemence. Is that fair to say, Jack?
Yeah, I'd probably say I'm the most lenient. I mean this with respect, but I think it's because I'm not necessarily pining for what had been before, more so than you lads, if I'm being brutally honest. But that being said, and I agree with what Reece said around the fact that I don't want him to leave at this point. I think that would be ludicrous.
No, and I don't either. I've got to make that very clear. I don't think sacking him would be the right approach with 13 games to go. But it comes back to that statement again for me. But sorry, I've sort of interrupted there. I'll let you go.
No, that's fine. That's fine, mate. I'm not overly won over by him. I don't think anyone in the fan base is, to be completely honest. Nothing has really changed, to be honest. We've got slightly better, I would say, ever so slightly better in terms of style versus Harris. But ultimately, the output's broadly the same, if not worse, in a lot of places. So I can't sit here and say that I think he's doing a better job than his predecessor. And even if you take Harris out of the equation and completely strip him out of this conversation completely, I don't think he's doing a particularly great job, even if you just based it on him alone. I think would probably be the thing I'd say. And when the brief that he was given, if I remember rightly, we saw a statement someone put up on Twitter the other day, a well-known name, that the brief was what was it? Expansive, entertaining football, and if we're being brutally honest, it's not been that. Tuesday was one of the most boring games I think I've been to in my entire Gillingham supporting life. And I've said this many times to you guys in the WhatsApp chat, and I've said it on Twitter, that the reason why I'm maybe a little bit lenient with Clemence, and why I look back and think maybe I was a little bit harsh with Harris at times, and with Millen, is that the players are playing exactly the same way across three managers. So at what point do you point the eye of Mortar on them instead of the manager?
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll get to the playing staff obviously later in the episode. That is something that's going to be covered. But for me, you just can't get away from the fact that 1.35 points per game is not good enough from where we were. And I was trying to do it, understandably, about Stephen Clemence rather than comparing to the predecessor.
Yeah.
I got a lot of flack on social media for putting up a tweet in just about Neil Harris yesterday when he went to Millwall. It was just one of them days on Twitter, another of them days. But yeah, he's won 6 out of 17 games, Reece. It's about 34%, which when you look at what the win percentage was in the league before he came in, I think it was 7 from 11 games. So you're looking at sort of 55, 60% at the time, regardless of whether we look nicer or we pass it more or we keep it better. Ultimately, it's winning football matches that gets you out of divisions and certainly League Two, correct?
No, I completely agree. And I had a look at earlier online the league table from the date Clemence was appointed to today, and we're 14th. For me, I think there's a lot of talk of people. I don't know if excusing is the right word, but people give out this indication that Clemence is a sort of above criticism and judgment at the moment because it's not his set of players and all those kind of things. And I personally don't really buy that. Because if that's the case, that because it's not his players, he gets a free pass in terms of results, then we essentially was writing off the season 11 games in when we made the decision to do what we did. And
so then you have to surely look at above. If that's what people are saying about the manager, then surely we have to question those that made the decision to remove the previous manager and employ Stephen Clemence. And it comes back to my point on previous episodes. Why didn't we just say thanks to Neil Harris at the end of last season if we wanted a massive change of direction, which was the statement? And I know there's ways you can interpret that statement, but surely if we wanted to become a possession-based team that passes it more, we should have just got rid of Neil Harris after the Salford game back in May and given a new manager the whole summer to bring in players that fit around a way that he wants to play, rather than trying to get them to do something they're not comfortable with from the start of October.
No, I agree. And I don't think the owners were, when they made the change, thinking, well, that's all right, we'll write this season off. I fully expect they wanted to bring in a manager who they thought was going to improve not just style of football but results with it, to make sure that we finish in the top 7 this season. And obviously I said to you two yesterday that I've been doing a little bit more digging into some of the stats, and obviously, like you said, we don't want to keep mentioning Harris's name, but for me it's kind of unavoidable, because I think whenever a manager gets sacked, the new man will always be compared to the person he's taken over from, because when you make that change, you're wanting and expecting to see an improvement. So like you say, in terms of all competitions this season, our win percentage under Harris was 57. It's 38 under Clemence. We scored 1.14 goals per game under Harris. It's exactly 1 under Clemence. And this is the one that for me is interesting, because I read a lot on social media about, you can clearly see what he's doing. We're a lot better. You can see that we're improving. Our attacking output's a lot better. Our shots per game under Harris this season was 11.2. It's 12.1 under Clement. So we're having 1 extra shot a game, basically. But in terms of shots on target, we're averaging less under Clements than we were under Harris. It was 3.9 under Harris, 3.6 under Clements. So for me, I mean, stats can be deceiving sometimes, but for me, all those statistics do is back up what my eyes are telling me, that I don't think anything is improving. I'm not saying it's necessarily getting worse, other than the goal scoring's not getting worse. The goal scoring's the same. But in terms of the points per game, it is, we had this discussion earlier, 1.35 to 1.7 points per game doesn't sound like a big difference. Over a season, that's 17 points. That's the difference between us making the playoffs and us finishing 15th, essentially.
Yeah, it's like you say, when you look at it as per game, it doesn't sound a great deal, does it, Jack? But when you work it out and multiply it by 46, suddenly it makes a big difference, especially in a campaign where at the moment, and again, I've got this off social media yesterday, Walsall win their game in out and they're 15th. They go into the playoffs. That's the nature of this division at the moment. And it is, and it's two words that I've used constantly throughout Stephen Clemence's reign and with this squad as well. So this isn't just levelled at Stephen Clemence. Fine lines. We seem to not often enough find our way to come out on the right side of said fine lines for whatever reason.
No, I agree, mate. I would say that was somewhat similar under Harris at certain points. Obviously not as bad as this is, though. I think there's minor signs that we're getting better in some forms. We're more resolute. We come from behind more often than we ever did under Harris. We're scoring more than one in a game, probably slightly more often than under Harris, but then we're scoring less goals, so it's caveated, and we're conceding more. I think it's bang average for the quality of the squad, mate, really. Despite the positives of coming from behind, it does seem to take us conceding for the team to remotely get into a game, or we're second half FC, basically, and even then the second half's not great, but the first half of games is, honestly, I think I put it on Twitter the other day that we went 11 games without scoring a first half goal. And I don't know, does that come back on Clemence? Because, I was fairly critical on Harris for quite a long time for similar-ish stats. And you lads did defend him. But then at the same time, now the eye is on Clemence. And I think ultimately, but for me, I think it comes down to the players. I've said it more often than not to you lads. I just don't think that they are playing to their potential. That they're a better team than how inconsistent they are. The thing that gets me with this team is it's not even so much the attacking output in terms of the lack of scoring goals, which is piss poor. Let's be completely honest. It's getting better. For me, it's more the other things around. And you put this as a topic point, so maybe I'm covering it too early, mate. But around attitude, So I'm not necessarily saying that they're sat there or stood there, shall I say, not trying necessarily. But I think the difference between a promotion winning team and someone that is happy to just stay in League Two and earn their money is the likes of Stockport. And you know what? I know they're lower in the table than us, but even when you look at Swindon the other night when they played us, their strikers are all over our centre backs, the same as Stockport. The moment we get the ball, the players are being driven at by the opposition from the front line all the way back. And it sets the tone, I think, for how a team wants to play. So it goes back to what we said on the last episode, mate, around intensity. There's no one willing to drive at people, really, in that team. Not many of them. There's not many of them willing to chase balls down or chase people down. There's not many of them willing to gamble on a 50-50. And I think it depends who you blame for that, I guess, really. And you've got to label some of that at Clemence, because he's got to have the nuts to be able to actually say to him in training or during the middle of a match, what are you doing? Get yourselves up for this. And it's happening too often, but it happened under other managers within this season as well. So I think for me, it does boil down, in my opinion, more on the players than anyone else that we're going to potentially blame tonight.
That's fair enough. Right, it was a topic that was going to be discussed later in the episode, but let's carry on with it, because you brought it up, so we might as well talk about it, Reece. I think I'll be completely honest. I'm loath to say that players are not trying and they don't care. I think that's a very risky path to go down. I get we can only go off of what we see with the naked eye and that type of thing, and that's what Jack sees, and we all see it different at the end of the day. But for me, there's too many players in that team that were part of this team last season that got us from bottom to 17th in half a season. If you go through it, like Connor Masterson was a regular second half of last season, Max Emer was a regular second half of last season. Ethan Coleman started playing towards the end of the season. Ollie Hawkins played a big part towards the end of last season. There's Tom Jeffries until he was injured. George Lapsley, as much as we probably all agree that his time with us has been underwhelming, still played a part and scored 3 goals that helped us keep us up. So for me, I'm slightly loath, like I say, to say that I don't think they care. But again, it could come back to instruction. Because if it was, and my point against you, Jack, or not against you, but is if it was the same person every time, the one that wasn't pressing, so say it was every time Ollie Hawkins wasn't up front, he's not doing his job, you go, well, yeah, that looks like that player don't give a toss. But the fact that it seems to be whether we play Hawkins on his own or Naderson with Walker or Walker with Clark the other night, this lethargy never seems to sort of disappear, if that's what we're labelling it. So is it potentially that's something that's coming from the coaching team and that's how they've set us up to play? Is it a lack of confidence? Is it? I think there's more things to it than just simply saying players are lazy and are just going through the motions and don't give a toss.
Yeah, I think there probably is some of that, mate. But then I just, like you say, the naked eye tells me that you see other teams who appear to be trying harder. I'm not saying they don't try. I'm just saying if 10 out of 10 gets you promoted in terms of attitude, we're probably a 6. We're just, like you said, we're too lethargic. And if it was, this is part of the reason it has to be said why I partly at times wanted Harris to leave. I never called for it directly, but there was moments where in our group chats and amongst friends as well, that I'd be like, look, I'm not particularly happy with him as a manager. And it was bred out of the fact that we looked too passive. We looked like we didn't try hard enough. And we just looked like we didn't have enough attacking intensity. But it's not changed. So again, like, at what point do you start saying it's the players? And we can't. What will end up happening is if we keep these players and then we ended up getting rid of Clemence, I just don't see it changing under someone else. So I think, you know, I'm not writing the season off, but I feel like a fair few of these players need to be potentially let go. You know, I think there's an element of it that in January last year we brought in a number of players on decent contracts because we needed to pay well for the position we were in the table. And they're sat on some nice, juicy contracts for League Two. There's a fair few of them that are in their 30s, not all of them, but a fair few of them. And I think they're sat there just happy earning their money rather than necessarily caring whether they win promotion or not. They would prefer it, I dare say. Of course they would. We're all human. We all want success. But I don't think it gets to their core that they really want to get promoted with this club and this team.
Yeah, I get. Obviously, it's difficult for them to feel the same about the club as we do as supporters. I understand that because we do it because we love it. It costs us money to go and follow our football club, so I get that there's a different approach from a professional footballer to a supporter, Reece. But what's your thoughts on the thing as a whole? Because are you somewhere in the middle? Agree with Jack? Agree with me? Or just tell us?
I feel like I'm probably somewhere in the middle because I don't think either of you are wrong. Because, you know, like what Jack said is not made up. It's fact. We don't start playing in football matches until we go a goal behind, and then suddenly we show an interest and intensity. And I don't know.
6 of the last 8, I've just checked. Sorry to interject again, is because it made me look. It's great being able to come from behind now, but we're having to do it too much. We've conceded the first goal in 6 of our last 8 football matches.
Yeah, and sort of it might lead on to my second point, where sort of I don't know if it's just a belief thing that once we go behind, they feel like, well, there's not a lot to lose now. We're behind anyway, and the shackles come off a little bit because I don't like I'm like you, Matt. I don't sit there watching games thinking these players aren't trying. But they just look like a team that lack any belief in their own ability quite a lot, especially in possession. They all lack quite a lot of bravery. We know most of these names from before they come to us, and we know that they're good players, but most, if not all of them, with the exception of probably Mahoney, I would say, whenever they receive the ball in positions to either shoot or play a pass forwards, they seem to not want to take that risk. We'll play the safe sideways or backwards ones. And there's also elements at times where I look at the way we play and I'm not entirely convinced that the players trust each other in certain regards. Tuesday was a good example. There's numerous times where Stockport's holding midfielder would come to the edge of the box and the goalkeeper would just play it into him, whether he had someone 10 yards away, 3 or 4 yards away. He'd trust him, he'd give it to him, and it takes them 3 passes and they're across the halfway line and coming at us. Numerous times Coleman goes into that position and we just won't give him the ball, as if we don't trust him to protect it, or we're too worried that he might lose it and then we can't recover. It just looks to me that they're, and again, that maybe that's because they're being asked to play a way that they're not entirely comfortable with. I don't know. it's one of them things that only the players can probably answer why this is how it is. But it does just look to me as if, yeah, we just lack an awful lot of belief. Because once we score a goal, we generally look okay. But all the time there's a nil against our scoreboard, we look so pedestrian and lethargic. It's unbelievable.
I have to just to say, to follow up from that, mate. I and you guys tell me otherwise here, right? But I don't think I've ever been this detached from a squad in terms of when you look at the stands to the pitch. Can you think of a team that you've not disliked but been detached from as much as this squad? Because the fact that we're having to generate an atmosphere at the start of a game is brilliant. I like the idea of what we're doing, but it's basically a byproduct of the fact that no one could be asked in the stadium because we match the intensity that we see with our eyes on the pitch. So that's a genuine question to you, Les. I can't think of a squad. I've been watching the team since 95, 96, mainly. I went in the season before a few times, but I don't really remember it. I can't remember a squad that's versus their ability. We might have had a few, like under Pennant, for instance, that were poor, or under Harris that were poor, and you kind of let them off a little bit because you thought, well, they're not doing very well because their ability's not great for the position they're in. These lads, ability-wise, there's not a squad I've been detached from as much as this, where I don't feel like they care enough about the fans either. You know, when they go off and clap the fans off for a game or after a game, there's no one in that squad that's coming forward and beating their chest. You know, there was always at least one, you know, a Josh Wright or whoever, someone in a squad for us has always been that person that kind of drives us forward, which probably leads on to a separate subject of a lack of leadership, which is something Harris wanted, but I just don't feel like there's any leaders in there either, other than maybe Coleman. But even he wouldn't be the type to beat his chest. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what we need to do, but it just illustrates the lack of a two-way kind of vibe between the players and the fans.
I agree on the part about the atmosphere. The atmosphere has been very poor this season for a club that's meant to be challenging for the playoffs. And the fact, if you're having to put out a hashtag on social media, I think we can all agree indicates that we're having to manufacture something when it should be organically manufactured because of the relationship between the fans being happy with what they're seeing and the players putting on a performance. The bit about the chest beating and that type of thing, do you think that maybe comes from the manager not wanting to do that now? Because people can think it's cringy or whatever, but there was more of a relationship with Neil Harris to the fans because of when he used to come over and just do the fist bumps. And if you remember the first game after he'd left, I think it was Scott Malone went and done it. And we've seen it at a couple of away games. I think Paul Hayatado was encouraged to go and do it in front of the away support in Notts County a couple of weeks ago. Stephen Clemence has come out and that's fine and said, it's not something I'm going to do. Could Clemence have been a bit better with that situation there, Reece, and maybe just helped himself and built that rapport between himself and the fan base? Because he's had a couple of opportunities to come to the Rainham end and just give it a little bit. And I understand that we've not achieved anything, but I still don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating a win. No,
as we've seen at the top level recently, of all the arguments about Klopp and Arteta and they do it. I think it's just part of the modern game now, isn't it? I don't think sort of 20 years ago that was something you'd see managers do, but it's very much part of what it is now. And yeah, maybe it would have been a better idea for him to be a bit more proactive in that regard and try and build that rapport, especially as he's come in, and other than knowing him through who his father was, I don't think anyone really knew too much about him. But no, the point about atmosphere, I can't disagree with. And yeah, it is a chicken and egg two-way street, but in ways I don't really blame the supporters for the lack of atmosphere, because I don't know the answer to this. So I could be thinking it could be more recent than I think it is, and I'm just forgetting. But in my mind, I'm thinking, if you've got a season ticket this season and you didn't turn up until half-time every single game, when would you have last missed a score?
Salford.
November?
Yeah, probably. If you're talking league games only, yeah.
Yeah.
December, if you're talking about FA Cup, Charlton. You
could probably do that with away games, actually, broadly speaking, as well. Bar Notts County, I don't think there's many back to November either. It's crazy. It's funny.
I think we've only led once at half time under Clemence in the league game, haven't we? And that was Notts County, I think.
Yeah, conceded first.
Would it be Salford? Or was that 1-1?
1-1. Matt Smith scored just before half time, and then Nichols. And so Stockport we didn't score. Newport we didn't score. Swindon we was behind at half time. Notts County we was in front 2-1. Walsall was 0-0. Both goals scored second half. MK Dons we were 0-0, lost 2-1.
Yeah.
Forest Green was 0-0 at half time. I want to say, yeah, Hawkins scored in front of the Rainham end. Accrington was 0-0 at half time. Sheffield United, we didn't score. Scott Malone scored second half against Colchester, 1-0. Scott Malone late against Sutton. Didn't score against Crawley. Didn't score against Forest Green or Bradford. 2 first half goals against Charlton in the Cup. Wimbledon was late, Conor Masterson. Tranmere was a last-minute free kick. We lost 3-1. Salford, we scored first half, but weren't leading. And Wrexham. And I want to say one more game, Hereford, I think we scored in the first half. So you're looking at 4 or 5 first half goals under Clemence. And I'm not saying it was any better under Harris. So it's not, again...
That probably was better. That probably was better, to be fair. I think the thing with Harris is, not to labour with it on him too much, because he's been through 2 other clubs since we've let him go.
Back-to-back promotions.
Yeah, but it's not got any better. But because Harris had been here longer, he had less chips in the bank with the fans, whereas Clemence has got more time on his side. But it will start to wane. You know, that is an extremely poor set of stats there, it has to be said. And it's interesting you say about the fact the lack of a bond with the fans. I actually wrote that as a note here. I've put that. There's no bond with the fans. We don't sing his name. I can't remember too many managers when we've done that.
Ironically, just to interrupt, we scored 3 first half goals in 5 games under Cliff Miller.
Did we really?
If I'm correct. We took the lead at Swindon. I think that was first half. We was 1-1 with Portsmouth in the trophy at half time. Johnny Williams. And Macaulay Bond scored early against MK Dons.
Under Harris, most of our goals were first half, weren't they? All the time we was winning 1-0. They were all, apart from Stockport, they were all first half goals, weren't they?
Yeah, Mansfield was first half. Doncaster second. Morecambe 2 in the first half. Harrogate really late. And then, yeah, if you go further down, Crawley, Sutton, Accrington, 2 against Southampton, or 1, dare I say, first half, Naddison.
1.
And Stockport wasn't. So, yeah, probably 75% under Harris. So, yeah, under Harris and Millen, everything was first half, it seemed, and now it's completely flipped on its head.
It's an interesting one because I'm in a group chat with a set of lads where we were talking about this the other day, and someone put in there, again, I hate talking about Harris here, but I'm the one who keeps bloody bringing him up. But in the group chat, someone put no, do not. Someone put a poll up that was who would you rather have right now? And 8 of us voted, and I was the only one to put Harris. 7 people said Clemence. So it's an interesting one, mate. As much as I'm agreeing with you guys, and I'm not saying I think Clemence is the answer. Most people, I think, in the fan base would rather have Clemence here than Harris. Judge of that what you will.
Yeah, I've seen on social media, I see someone said the other day that they'd rather lose 4-3 at home to Stockport and see us having a go. Now, I can't buy that myself because you lose, you don't get any points. But I suppose it's what you want, isn't it? I suppose if you're at a point in life where you just want to come and watch football and be entertained, then that's fine. But if you want our team to get promoted, I'd rather take the points however which way we get them. But each their own again, isn't it?
We're not being
absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. This was the tweet. Someone said they'd rather we had a go against Stockport and lost 4-3 and be entertained. For me, I'd take the point. And again, I think there was extenuating circumstances with the Hawkins illness and stuff like that. So I didn't think it was a bad point in isolation. But we need more than just drab 0-0s at the moment, because like Reece made the point in WhatsApp group the other day, you can't draw your way to the playoffs.
I think the thing with him is he is pretty grounded when we win, and I think he realises that where we are isn't the right place to be. So I think that's probably why he doesn't come out and go for it in front of the fans. So that might be an extenuating circumstance as to why that is. I think also one thing I would say in his defence, and I wouldn't say that any other managers before him have been bad at this necessarily, but I think he's quite good. Maybe not on Tuesday, but in previous games, virtually every game I've seen him in post-match press conference, I've never watched him and thought, you're talking crap. Like he always tells it how it is. I think you always go, if we played poorly, he will say it. He's not afraid to say it. So to me, that maybe makes me think that he's saying it to the players. But at the same time, and I've said it before, it doesn't come across like he's a brutal kind of ruthless manager, in my opinion. I'm judging him purely on one video that Block did and just his mannerisms in his press conferences. He seems like a very
He looks like a number two to me. He still looks like a number two,
or a coach. Not even maybe
exactly.
number two, a coach.
It just looks like someone that's not the main man, that's not used to having to go out and talk to the press and make the big decisions. And hopefully that will come with time, absolutely. But yeah, for me, an assistant manager or a coach, I think is how I'd describe it. I sent you to the tweet today from the press conference, and that wound me up a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I'm all for showing teams respect, and we've got to understand that Wrexham are a good side. But opening paragraph was how good Wrexham are, what good players Wrexham have got. I hope we can create more. Just didn't come across as bullish to me. And where was that? Oh, we've got good players, we're going to take the game to them. For me, it just comes across a bit defeatist.
Harris was never like that though, mate. The last person that was like that was Evans, I think, because it used to wind me up with Harris. I completely agree with you though. Completely agree with it. It permeates a mindset of that you're not good enough, or that you've got an uphill battle, which is not necessarily the best battle cry that you want to be putting forward to your players. So I don't think he's helping things.
Because it filters down, doesn't it? It filters down to the playing staff. And then do they go, are we good enough? And then does that become a byproduct of what he's saying? And that's why we see this lethargic, lazy, don't give a toss type approach to games, or whatever you want to label it. It could be something that's like I say, it's filtering down.
Yeah, I agree. But that being said, I think he does come across like he's relatively tactically knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe, again, though, talking about the fact he's maybe more of a coach or an assistant than a manager, I feel like he maybe overcomplicates League Two a little bit. I don't know. We've changed tactics once. It's a bit of an oxymoron. I'm saying he's tactically knowledgeable, but then he's overcomplicating it, and we don't look tactically amazing. So I think
it sums up where we are, doesn't it? It sums up where we are. Everything all seems a bit confused, and like Reece has already mentioned, you said it. We're not really sure what the approach is, what the style is, what it may become, which is probably why we are where we are, and we're outside the playoffs, scrambling around trying to force our way in, rather than potentially should have maybe half a dozen more points and we'd be comfortably inside the top seven. Reece?
Yeah, I'd agree. Because the thing is, because ultimately, in terms of expectations from the day Clemence took over, or whatnot, you'd expect that with each passing week of him being here, we're gradually going to get better. The day we recorded our last episode, we were inside the top seven, and we had a 7-point gap to 15th, I think. So we're now outside the top seven. We're 3 points off. Is it 16th? So I can't buy the argument that things are getting any better, or we're looking any better at the moment. Like I say, I don't think he knows what we're meant to be at the moment, because even some of the team selections, like Tuesday night, Jaden Clark's gone from being out in the cold for 2 months to suddenly starting the centre forward. That's like, where's that come from?
When you've got a fit centre forward on the bench,
yeah,
albeit one out of form. But penny for Ashley Naderson's thoughts. What is that going to do for a player that's already got low confidence?
No, I agree. And like I touched on earlier, I just is there elements of it which is true and fair, of course, but I don't totally buy the argument that because he's new and it's not his players, that's an excuse for us not seeing an improvement when we've been touching distance to the playoffs when he took over. I still think it wasn't an unrealistic aim to say we should be in there at the end of the season. You think when Harris took us over,
there were two people that said at the start of the season that we'd never drop outside the top seven. Now, if you two can just nudge my memory of who that was. I mean, and I'm usually the super positive one.
And I think we probably spent more time out of the top seven than in it. But no, but if you think back to when Harris took us over in League One, they weren't his players. He got 10 minutes on deadline day to try and bring someone in. He improved us. You look to someone else in our division who was linked with our job, who people sort of scoffed at. Robinson's gone into Salford and they ain't lost a game under him yet. And I sort of, in hindsight, I look at it now and think, with the type of player and character we've got, would someone like him with a bit more fire about him, maybe wouldn't have been so afraid to go in there and shake things up a little bit, maybe would get more response out of these players. So there's not a lot we can do about it now, but yeah, I just feel like you've sort of touched on, it's a big difference to being a good coach. We heard the stories when he came in that Jack Grealish said how good he's been for his career. That's great, but but trying to help players individually on the grass is a lot different to tactically setting up a football team to win football matches in League Two. And at the moment, I'm just nothing against the bloke. He seems a really good bloke, and I hope the improvements come in time. Like I said, I'm not saying let's sack him now, but at the moment, I'm just unconvinced that he's the right fit, I must admit.
Yeah, that's my feeling. I just think there's more since he came in. I think there's more questions have come about than actual answers and solutions.
I think he's trying to be maybe the players' mates a bit too much. We don't know behind closed doors, but like Reece says, doesn't come across as being that kind of ruthless manager. And Robinson would have been my choice personally. I said it in the group chat to you, lads. I think one of the reasons we hired him, when I was told this by someone at the club, I don't know if you want me to name him, but very high up in factory, that the reason we hired him was that he watched every single game that we had done previously in the season and presented a PowerPoint presentation essentially of every single game, where we went wrong, every single player and their abilities and where he could help them. And ultimately, I think from what it sounded like, the Gallantons walked out of the interview and said, blimey, that guy was prepared. I don't see how we can't give him the job. But again, to me, that comes across as being a coach in many respects in what he said. So you've got to admire the preparation and the attention to detail. He's just not proven at this moment to be. I don't think he's a bad manager. He's just been distinctly average, very inconsistent, like we have been as a team. He is his team, really. And I'm not convinced he's the long-term option. We'll obviously give him until at least the summer. But am I sat here thinking he's going to be the man to take him to the playoffs? No, I can't say he is. Hence why the other day I ticked Harris on that poll, because I think we probably would be in the playoffs now if Harris hadn't have left, or a lot would have been less inconsistent. That month that we lost between Harris and Clemence, I think is ultimately what's going to be what costs us. Because if we'd have maybe hired Clemence directly after he left, maybe that month means we don't. Although that being said, someone said the other day we won 2 and lost 3 in that time, but it just felt like it all kind of drifted and all the momentum completely went. It was already drifting anyway because of results, but that just completely killed it. And long term into next season, if we don't go up, do I think with his players, like Reece said earlier, if we make the argument that maybe he does need his players that he wants, do I really think we'll do better next season? I'm not so sure. I think part of it, though, comes down to letting some of the lads go that, in my opinion, do not care enough and aren't putting in enough effort.
And of course, there will be player churn in the summer. So, yeah, I think we all have to give him a transfer window and a proper pre-season to see what we can do, unless it goes horribly wrong over the next 13 games. But there's nothing to suggest that it will go to that point so quickly. But talking of players, and we've mentioned that, they haven't been Stephen Clemence's players, so you have to give him time for that. But there are some of these players that are Stephen Clemence's players. And we're going to talk about January transfer business. We're going to talk about the 2 men that are responsible for the transfer business, because they don't seem to get talked about nearly enough for my liking. But a quick summary of January. Players out: Shay Alexander by mutual consent. Macaulay Bonne on loan to Cambridge. Tom Nichols sold to Mansfield, and Lewis Walker sold to Woking. Players coming in essentially were 4 direct replacements. Romeo Hutton, undisclosed fee from Swindon. Josh Walker on loan from Burton. Jorge Hurtado, now injured, on loan from Watford. And Josh Andrews, we've not yet seen, undisclosed, from Birmingham via a loan at Accrington Stanley. I've written down, gentlemen, understand the rolling of the dice with the forward line, and also understand us signing Josh Andrews as a longer-term project while available, before price potentially rises. But in terms of the here and now, which is surely the most important thing, are we in a better position at the start of the January window, and certainly 9 a.m. deadline day? Reece, I will come to you first.
No. There's your answer. No, listen, in terms of Hutton, looks a really good signing, to be fair. I feel for him at times. I sat there up in the Raynham end in that first half where there was 2 or 3 times where he threw his arms up in the air because we wouldn't give him the ball.
I need to watch this, because you're about the 4th person that said this, and I've missed it every single time. Yeah. So I might just do player cam at the weekend. I'm going to go old school Sky Sports. I'm just going to follow Romeo Hutton around for 10 minutes, I think. Yeah.
And I felt a bit sorry for him. He must have been standing there thinking, why did I sign for these and not the ones on the other side of the pitch? Because no, he's
of course, yeah.
what I think we've needed all season. He gives us that drive from a fullback position. His quality is good. The quality of his crossing is good. I don't think he's actually got a goal contribution yet, which is no slight on him. I think he probably should have, with the amount of service he's put into the penalty area so far. so no, he looks a really good find, and the forward situation is. In some aspects, I feel sorry for the football club. In some ways, I don't. The Hurtado one,
Can't help.
It's rotten luck. Because listen, we didn't see enough of him to be able to say whether he was going to score a lot of goals for us to push us into the playoffs. But he was lively, and contradicting what I said about the rest of them earlier, he was fearless. He didn't care where he had the ball, where he received it. He'd be positive with it. He'd drive forward. He'd create panic in opposition defenders. And that's something without him that we don't have. And then obviously the Andrews one, I feel really sorry for him. You know, obviously he's got this move and he wants to help out, and he's had this setback. And obviously I do completely take the point that maybe he was signed with a more long-term viewing, but in the here and now, when sort of January, you're quite restricted, signing someone that when you had been injured for 2 months, hoping he was going to quickly get back fit and come and help our season. Maybe it was a little bit naive, or maybe not naive, but maybe if we was going to bring him in, maybe letting both Nichols and Bongo was a little bit silly in hindsight, because I still see even after Tuesday yesterday when Harris got the Millwall gig, people were laughing about Bon. I see someone said, well, hopefully now that Harris has left Cambridge, hopefully that doesn't mean they'll send him back. Well, I'd be quite glad if Cambridge were to send Bon back tomorrow, to be honest, because our front line today is weaker than it was at the start of deadline day, ultimately.
I understand why they did it, though, to a certain degree. I mean, I said on your transfer window kind of update thing that I did for you, mate, that I wasn't gutted Nichols and Bon. Well, I'm not saying you lads were or anyone else was, but Nichols and Bon had contributed to a strike force at 25 goals. We almost had to roll the dice a little bit. You know, they put themselves in the position that they were disposable, is probably what I would say. So that's probably the first thing, but we've not really replaced with better. I thought that we'd signed 3 lads that were here to prove a point, and one of them certainly did for the first 3 games he was here, and was everything that we're lacking in that squad, as Reece says. You know, that when I say players don't care enough or not trying enough, he was the complete opposite of that. He for a lad that's not even our player, I thought he was fantastic,
and doesn't even speak the language as well. So that just
exactly.
I think that there was the drag back and the spin at Notts County when he came on was unbelievable. We left the 2 centre midfielders on their arse. And then even the Swindon one, comes back to what you've said about bravery, Jack, and fearlessness, Reece, is he gets absolutely whacked on the halfway line before he wins the penalty. He just bounces straight back up.
Which is why he's out now.
Yeah, well then, it's either that one or the one in the penalty area where he gets absolutely wiped out as well. Yeah, but it's that type of fearlessness. There's a tendency there. The first tackle, you could just stay on the floor, roll around, and get a free kick.
Yeah, I agree, mate.
It's gutting. It is gutting.
And then Andrews, I'm not digging the lad out. You know, we've not seen anything to see whether he's good enough or not. But not that I didn't care hugely that Bon or Nichols left, but I find it very, very strange that we've essentially, you know, even without this setback, he probably doesn't play until Saturday at the very least. That's nearly March. You think, come on, you've had a whole transfer window to sign,
and then you've got strikers, match fitness into that as well before he's up to full speed. You're going to be looking at April before he's up at 100%. I'd say. You've
got 3 lads that I thought were there to prove a point, which I thought was seen as being a positive, but they were all unproven. But obviously, circumstances gone against us with injuries. With Andrews, you look at him and think it's probably self-made from us. We didn't need to sign him now. We could have waited till the summer and kept one of the lads that was here, even though they weren't necessarily a huge amount of form. And I have to say, it's early on in his career, and a lot of people have said he's not getting service. But Walker described himself as being a lower league Jermaine Defoe. I've not seen. He looks like Willem Defoe at the moment, not Jermaine Defoe. I've seen nothing to suggest he's a decent striker.
He's the victim of his he just feels like the victim of his own debut at the moment, unfortunately, because that's been the best 30 minutes we've seen of him was at MK Dons, and aside from that, there's been nothing to write home about, has there?
No, he does look poor. It must be said. I hope he proves me wrong. And I was excited about him signing. Actually, when you look at his record in the conference, it's pretty bloody good. League One, not so much. You make that and you look at it and go, well, he should be at least above average in League Two, and he's been below average, to put it nicely.
I think for me, with the forward situation, this is maybe leading on to the next topic a little bit, is that, did I hear rightly at the fans forum that Jacket said that both Hurtado and Andrews, we found out about their availability quite late
Yeah.
in the window, which
Which
leads me
makes
to
you
think
wonder
that
what they've been doing
this
for the
goal,
first
What
30
this goal
days. Yeah.
situation's been on the card since September, that we've all known we needed a goal scorer. So what's been done between then and the 30th of January to fix the situation? I get we're not going to go and find a 25 goal season striker in January. We know that it's difficult, but I don't know. It feels to me like, listen, Hurtado looked like he was going to be a really good find, but let's be honest, if anyone like that alone's a punt. They just seemed a little bit like pre-Gallinson kind of signings to me, personally, anyway.
Yeah, I do. I know what you mean. We basically
in
feels
terms
like
of the
they've sat
approach,
there
yeah.
for a long time and not that, and essentially we've nicked two lads at the death, rolling the dice, and you know, yeah, what have we been doing in January? If you believe what people would have said, we were in for Ollie Palmer and Jack Marriott, supposedly, according to some sources, whether that was true or not, you know. So we're almost a victim at the moment.
There was
we did it
was a whisper about Ollie Palmer. Sorry to interject again, because that got brought up on the match preview last night, and Nathan, who was on with me, the Wrexham supporter, said that there were whispers at their end that there was at least interest. I'm not sure how far it went, but
I think we're maybe, mate, a victim of, like, in the summer we was after May. How long were we after him, and how long did we wait before we then signed someone else who might have, you know, there might have been a gap between the time we were chasing him to when we eventually got Bond. We could have signed someone better than Bond, but not quite as good as May. And I wonder if we did the same thing in January. So we're possibly a victim of our own financial success, if you will, by having the Gallinsons as the owners. I guess we won't know. That's the difficulty with this. I know that one of the topics here is Jacket and Hess, but one of the things the first thing I put here is, problem is we don't know exactly what they do. You know, Hess, we know, looks for players. That's a pretty easy one to work out. But Jacket, which is probably not a good thing to be saying, but what does he do?
well, his job seems to have got wider and wider. So he's clearly doing more than, because he said in the fans forum, he's concerned that he's spreading himself a bit thin, if I think I've quoted him correctly. So he's obviously taken on more than when he had originally arrived, which to me says, why are we not employing more people with their specific skill sets, which was one of the big things that came up in an early question and answer session, fans forum type thing. But yeah, we have to talk about, I think, Kenny Jackett and Andy Hessenthaler, because like you two have raised some really interesting points there. If we've become aware of Josh Andrews' availability at the end of January, we've clearly not scouted him because he's not played since December the 9th. So there's a massive risk there. I get longer term. I can understand it from the point of view that if we've paid, say, 100k for him at 22 years of age, the risk is if he gets fit and goes and plays 10 games at the end of the season and scores 8 goals, then he's going to be worth 200k in the summer. So I can see it from that point of view. But how much have we really watched him if he's not played since the start of December? And the same with Hurtado. What have we done from January the 1st to January the 30th if two of our arrivals have arrived on deadline day and we supposedly only found out about their availability late on? It just, I don't know, it just beggars belief. So let's talk about them. January 2023 was obviously their first transfer window, and I get that it's easier to bring people into a side that need to move from off the bottom of the table to safety because you're not seen as a rival to those teams at the top end of the division, so they're more than happy to give you players. I'm talking Ollie Hawkins and George Lapsley, that type of thing. We then took advantage of the situation and the circus, which is Crawley, so we was able to get Glenn Morris on a permanent and Tom Nichols. We used them two words that have been unheard of over the last sort of 30 years. Well, no, that's probably a bit harsh. The last 15 years, that was release clause to buy Timmy Dieng. They were all solid additions. And then I don't think we'd say that Ethan Coleman and Jaden Clark were any type of high risk. They would have been coming in on low wages for relatively small fees with a view to the future. One has certainly progressed more than the other. I think that's fair to say. But I think we're all in agreement that January's transfer business was very solid, albeit it was probably easier to improve us being bottom of the league. So my question now to you two, since the summer, have they done enough to improve us enough to make us challenge at the top of the table when the business becomes a little bit more tricky?
I probably would say, well, okay, so in the summer, on the edition we did, we said that we thought the business was a 9. So I'm not going to necessarily contradict myself. I did think it was good business.
Yeah.
So again, does the eye go on the players for their ability and how they're performing? But equally, you know, we said that we needed to add pace and a goal scorer, and we didn't do that in the summer.
No.
And have we really done it in January?
Pace to a degree with Naderson, if we believed everything, but certainly not a natural goal scorer.
In January, though, as well, though. Hurtado, did he? If you're going by Football Manager and 20 is the fastest pace, where do they all rank in that kind of footing? I mean, we've not seen Andrews, but I can't suspect he's very fast, being a big lad. He might be. I might prove me wrong. Walker's shown nothing to me that he's got an acceleration. He might have pace, but he hasn't got a turn of pace where he gets past people. Not that I've seen. We might not have seen the best of him. Hurtado, I don't think was an outright rocket, but he had the bravery to go past people and take them on. So there's no one with raw searing pace. Whether that's easy to find or not is another matter. And we've not signed a proven goal scorer again, so you have to caveat it slightly that it's bloody difficult to sign players like that, but other teams are doing it. So where are we going wrong? So I wonder if there's an element for me that they're I think with Hessenthaler in kind of League Two and probably in the National League and below, I feel like his scouting network and his contacts are probably fantastic. And Jacket maybe in and around the kind of lower leagues is okay as well. But I feel like we're maybe just we don't really have a big scouting network, do we? We've got a lad who's our scout who's, as far as I can see, not been a footballer. A Turkish lad, I think his name is potentially, but I'm not criticising him necessarily. I'm just saying the club maybe needs to, like you've said, not be spread so thin and have a bigger scouting network. Again, we don't know the inner workings of the club, but it does feel like Reece said that this January was a bit of a scally window. I think is a bit of an overstretch to say. I think they used to that, mate, but it wasn't very good, was it really? It's not proving to be very good. We're only in February, but
I think I can understand what Reece means in terms of a scally window and everything felt a little bit last minute, albeit with a little bit more money and a bit more ability to pay a few more quid each week. I think is that what you meant, Reece? Or
yeah, because obviously we got Hutton in, which probably by our standards for January signings was quite a good one. But yeah, it just felt like that we left it. You know, we all said the most important thing for us to address was the forward situation, and it was left till the very last day to do so. And like Jack said earlier about May and the talk of other strikers in January, Clark Harris got mentioned. It just seems like the number one target and then who we end up signing, there's just a massive gulf. There's nothing in between. It's literally all or nothing, it seems. And I'm just not too sure on that approach. And in terms of like what you said, in terms of actually knowing what they do, because it's quite hard to judge sometimes these fully when if we look back to the summer before this season, you know, you look at Masterson coming in permanently, Mahoney came in, Malone.
Well, I've written them all down and I've put a tick, a cross or a question mark next to them in terms of whether I think hit or miss or still not sure. So we can run through that if you want to have a look.
Well, what I'm saying is that you look at Masterson, Mahoney and Malone, I don't think these three are signing if Neil Harris isn't here. So
Absolutely
who's
not.
actually signing the players? Is it the recruitment team or is it the manager, or is it that there's a little bit of mixture in both? In which case, I think you're always likely to end up with a little bit of confusion somewhere along the line. And don't get me wrong, they've got some good ones. You know, OG was a really good find. Hutton's been a really good find. But for me, I think the way I'd probably sum it up is that there's, despite the fact we've got better resources now, we've got these ambitious owners. There's a lot of talk around the fan base. I think Jack's already mentioned it on this tonight that we once again need quite a lot of surgery in the summer. And for me, these two have had 3 windows. So if we're now going into another summer and people are saying this squad needs a lot of surgery, then something isn't quite working.
Yeah,
it's breaking down somewhere in the process. Absolutely.
I would say, mate, as well, we thought on the last episode and other fans have thought that FFP was an issue. But Brad said at the last fans forum that it's not. Yeah, you can put equity into the business, so you can effectively pump money in as equity that appears as turnover, and as it appears as turnover, it will mean our turnover is boosted, and therefore FFP doesn't come into play because it's against turnover that the wages are measured. So, with that in mind, I'm not asking the club to go out and spend silly money on people. I can imagine Jack Marriott, who we could have got essentially, he's probably on 8 or 9 grand a week potentially at Wrexham, or maybe slightly less.
It's probably
But
the same for Clark Harris as well, yeah, and May.
Yeah, if you'll believe the money that we were paying for Bon and for Nichols, which wasn't a pauper's wage, you have to ask the question of why we've not signed a marquee name potentially, why we've not gone out and gone and got someone across any window. I would say not just January. But I agree with Reece's point. Something is fundamentally wrong if we are asking for surgery to happen again on the squad. I completely agree.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. If you're challenging for the playoffs, you shouldn't be having to look at a squad overhaul every single summer without asking questions of those that are responsible for the transfers. So,
and isn't there also a lack? Apparently, there is actually a lack of players out of contract here in the summer, which then raises a different problem. That, like Jack says, there are going to be a lot of them on good money that we may have to try and shift if we want to bring more in, which isn't necessarily going to be an easy task, given that a lot of them, we'd probably say, haven't quite performed to their fullest in their time here.
One of them being Lapsley, who joked, obviously, on your thing, Matt, in the factory, about the fact that the squad doesn't have much in the way of pace. And again, you know, as much as I'm questioning their commitment at times and their will to win and get into a ball quicker than other teams, etc., but maybe they don't have the raw attributes to necessarily do that collectively as a squad. And there's you know, who's assembled that squad. So again, the eye does have to fall on them a little bit in that regard.
Absolutely. Right, let's just run through the if we go through the summer window, obviously I'm not going to judge. We've spoken about the January, and I'll just quickly to have my point, and you two know that I was a bigger fan of Shea Alexander than both of you, but it is clear to see, I'm going to hold my hands up. I like Shea, but Romeo Hutton's absolutely a massive upgrade and has been a complete breath of fresh air watching him in terms of crosses into the box, accurate crosses into the box, chances created, and I think Reece or Jack alluded to it. He's probably could have 2 or 3 assists with a bit more luck. I think he gets an assist at Newport if Timmy Dieng's shot goes in. He certainly gets an assist against Notts County if Tim Dieng's head doesn't hit both posts. I think there's been a couple of saves from Ollie Hawkins' headers, so he could be sitting here. But ifs and buts don't win your points, do they? Unfortunately. Right, let's just run through the summer business and then we'll go. So we'll go hit, miss, or undecided. I've gone, right, I've done it in, I think, time order. So Max Clark, Reece. One word. Hit, miss, or undecided?
Undecided, only because of the last couple of weeks, though.
Jack?
Literally the same answer, mate. Probably word for word.
Undecided. I've got a question mark next to him. Connor Masterson. Jack?
Hit.
Reece?
Hit.
Full house, all in agreement. Johnny Williams. Reece?
Miss.
Jack?
I'm going to say undecided, and I'm going to caveat it slightly, mate, that he is probably a miss based on his stats and based on what he did at Swindon. But he's one of the only players I feel that actually gives a shit. So, excuse the French. So he's an undecided because I feel like he's at least trying to make himself better in game.
I've got undecided as well. Ashley Nadesan, I'll start. I think it's going to be the same for all of us, unfortunately. Miss. He's a striker. He doesn't score enough goals.
Yeah, miss for me. I will point out that in the summer, I did say I thought he was an underwhelming signing and got absolutely crucified for it. So I think I've been proven right there. But yeah, a big miss, unfortunately, for him.
If only the season was a month long, Reece. I'm assuming you're in agreement.
No, yeah, completely agree.
Scott Malone, Jack.
I'm going to say undecided because I feel like he was a hit for the first half of the season until Harris went. He's dropped off slightly, then got good again, and then dropped off again to the point where he's lost his place. So I'm going to say undecided, but it would have been a categorical hit the last time we did this.
I'm going to say hit. I think it's more to do with the fact that we rest and rotated at Notts County and Max Clark was good rather than a lack of form from Scott Malone. So I'm going to say hit. And I think we'd certainly be worse off without a couple of goals that he scored. Reece?
Yeah, I agree. Hit. Think he's much better in a 4 than a 5, which probably doesn't help him at the minute.
Shadrach Ogie, Reece?
Yeah, hit. Had a little wobble a couple of weeks ago, but looked good again Tuesday. So hopefully that was just sort of young player having a bit of a rough couple of weeks. But no, in the main, very good.
Jack?
Yeah, I agree, mate. He's one of the only players, along with maybe Coleman, where you could see him being snapped up by someone bigger for more money than we paid for him.
Absolutely agree. I've got hit as well. Last couple, Connor Mahoney. I'm going hit. Again, I know he drifts in and out of games, but he's probably our only genuine match winner. And his numbers back it up. I think he's got 5 goals and 6 assists this season. Without him, we'd be a lot lower in the table. Reece?
Yeah, completely agree. He's contributed well, not saying he's contributed too much because no player has in terms of goals, but in terms of percentage of goal contributions in
Of
our
what we've
team,
got,
he's been too important. Yeah, hit for me.
Yeah, I was going to say undecided, but I think Reece has swayed my opinion to hit based on what he just did there.
You said exactly the same as me. What do you mean he swayed you?
All right, both you did then.
Final one, Macaulay Bonne. I'm going to say undecided. No, I'm not. I put miss. Sorry. Again, I know he was our top scorer when he left, but he's a striker who didn't score enough goals. And like Jack made the point earlier, it was part of a forward line that wasn't contributing nearly enough. But to contradict myself, which I think we might all do, I'd still be more than happy if we recalled him from Cambridge and used him for the final portion of the season. Jack.
Which is a byproduct of how poor the window's actually proved
Which again
to be.
comes back to where we are as a club at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah. I would say miss, which he did quite regularly for us.
Ooh. It's all right, he's signing for Millwall tomorrow, so it don't matter.
Yeah. Harris is going to go to the Prem and leave him again.
Exactly, yeah. Reece, sorry.
No, you'd have to say that any striker that come in the summer has been a miss because they've not scored.
But, and one final question, this is just something I thought of now. If we are at home to Doncaster final day of the season and we need to win to get into the playoffs, who would you rather have in your strike force? Macaulay Bonne and Tom Nichols, or Josh Walker and Josh Andrews? Reece.
The former.
Jack.
Yeah, based on right now, mate. Based on right now, the former.
Yeah, this is said in jest before we get absolutely canned on social media for slagging off new signings. It's just a bit of a laugh, but it's what we've said all along, isn't it? You've replaced, regardless of their stats and what you think of the individuals, we replaced EFL experience with unknown quantities, which is a big risk. But we've already said we understand the need to roll the dice. Right. We've done Stephen Clemence. We've done January recruitment. We've spoken about Kenny Jackett and Andy Hessenthaler. We've spoken about business. We've done player attitude. We've done all that. Where do we finish before we start to finish? I will start this. I said in my pre-season preview that we would finish sixth. As I've already joked, Reece and Jack both said in an earlier episode that we wouldn't drop outside the top 7 all season. I had to do a pre-recording with Gabe Sutton yesterday evening for his EFL debate show because I'm missing it tonight to talk to you two, which was about the playoff scramble. And he asked me where we would finish. And for the first time, I wobbled and I said, I am not convinced that we finish in the top 7. And if you had to ask me to put my neck on the line, and I would say we just miss out at the moment. I see us finishing about 8th to 10th, 11th. Jack.
I'd say 10th, mate. I'd say 10th. Yeah, we're too inconsistent. We're too inconsistent and we're not getting any better than what we were before Harris left. So I think 10th ultimately. And like Reece has pointed out in our group chats, we've got some tough teams to come. So I think that's...
It's in our hands, isn't it? This is what I've said to everyone. It's in our hands if we show enough cojones and enough about us to go and grab the games by the scruff of the neck. We can't say that we're relying on other teams, but to caveat that, the big fear is, like you said, we're massively inconsistent, and I just can't see us picking up enough points against teams in and around us. Reece, over to you.
You two are going to make me seem really, really pessimistic. I agree with you, Matt. I think it's a tough ask from here, despite the fact, people you can look at, oh, we're level on goal difference and stuff, but most of bloody league is, you know what I mean? It's not much of a comfort blanket at the moment, only being outside the playoffs and goal difference because there's that many teams involved.
No, because we could be 14th by the weekend.
Yeah, I think we're equally as likely to finish 16th as we are 7th at the moment. Is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Like Jack said, fixtures are tough. Form's not great, and I think it just comes down to, for me, I just don't see us putting a run together where we'll go on a 4 wins in 6 kind of run of form. And there's so many teams involved in this battle for seemingly now, where the sort of the top 6 have pulled away a little bit. It's a lot of teams fighting for seemingly one place. A couple of them will inevitably at some point hit stride and pick up a good run of form. And just from what my eyes are telling me, watching us every week, I don't see it. Ultimately, our best run of form remains the first 4 games of the season. We've all been sitting here since September saying we just need a run. We just need to start scoring some goals and it will click.
Yeah,
we're 75% of the way through the season now. It hasn't materialised. So I don't see it materialising, and I think we'll finish 13th.
Which goes back to something we saw on Twitter a couple of days ago, and I think it was James Pemble that tweeted and said there is still the chance that we could have our worst season since 1994-95, and he got jumped on by a few people who said, "Oh, he clearly didn't watch us under 80 Pennock and that type of thing." But if we go on a horrendous run between now and the end of the season, we could invariably finish lower than we finished last season, which would be staggering.
It's a bit like what I asked you to yesterday. If we was to finish sort of 12th, 13th this season, is it actually a worse season than last season, given the resources and expectations?
It's a much bigger failure for me, 100%.
I don't think it is based on the I can't say finishing 12th, 13th is worse than finishing 17th. But I understand the logic behind the answers, but yeah, let's see. I don't think we're going to finish well. Another thing that isn't finished is the self-service pumps. I had to get that in before the end. Got it in. Close, nearly didn't. Never going to come.
I don't even write it on the notes now. I just rely on you to bring it up. So well done.
I remembered it a couple of minutes ago. I nearly went the whole episode without saying it.
Any other business, Reece, Jack? Anything else to add?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything, haven't we?
The only thing from me, mate, I would say, and I put it on Twitter the other day, and I don't know how much this is going to gain legs, and I don't think it ever will necessarily, but I said the other day, I think what would help with atmosphere, and something that really doesn't help the players in the first half, as much as they've got to dig deep and find it in themselves to be better than what they are right now. I remember the days. Yeah, I remember the days when there was a town end. We attacked the town end first half, or the second half for that matter, and it was like having two Rainamans. And then if they can find the money to build a new stand potentially, or something that replicates in some form the old town end. I mean, I don't think you go back to terrace. Trevor Pipe said on Twitter after you've gone seating. My argument was we're temporary seating, so does it really count? But
even if you work with what you've got, you could split it, couldn't you? So even if we had like a big following coming down like Wrexham on Saturday, don't give them 1,600, give them 1,200, and let us have half of it, like we used to have, because that's how it used to be, wasn't it? You was right next to the away fans.
Yeah, but that being said, Matt, I think that if you compare the old town into the Brian Moore now, it's chalk and cheese. Somewhere in the middle would be, I think, perfect. I don't know what the answer would be, but I feel like that would greatly enhance the atmosphere. And people say, well, you'd lose people out of the Rainham end. But yeah, you would. But equally, I don't remember it being an issue years and years ago. It was genuinely. I used to stand on the town end. I didn't sit in the Rainham end or stand or sit or stand on the Rainham end, regardless of which version of the Rainham end. I stood in the town end, and I think it aided with the atmosphere, and it meant that both halves of football, this was a fortress to come to. It is no longer that because of the atmosphere, but that is partly borne out. And people could make the argument that, well, we've not had a town in for 15 odd years, and the players have managed to do better in other seasons. Yes, and that's partly why I reckon the players aren't performing to their abilities. But equally, I can appreciate that attacking an empty stand in the first half every game probably isn't conducive to that. They need some form of help, and you can see a pronounced difference when they're attacking the Rainham end. And I don't think it's any
if we go back to first half goals this season at home, it's been shocking. Is it any coincidence that was full of Charlton fans that day? And we scored 2 at that end, and that wasn't even our own fans in there. So it has an effect, because I think if your own fans are in there, you want to play for them. And if opposition fans are in there, you want to play better because you want to make sure you keep them quiet. So it works both ways.
There's an element of me that likes the fact they're shunted in the corner road, but I do agree with you.
And that was my point about maybe you could split, because I think the top tier is a no-go now, isn't it? I think it's condemned completely.
Condemned.
But surely you could put our fans next to the tunnel now where it is. I know it was difficult when it was the old town end because the tunnel was in the middle of the pitch. But now you could put us next to the tunnel and maybe give them half of the bottom tier, segregate a few bits off in the middle. And again, it's regardless of who's in there, it's something, it's noise. Reece, thoughts?
No, I can't disagree. And that's why at times I do feel like, as much as people don't like it, I'm surprised we've not started turning ourselves around from kick-off at home games, just to try and get a lead for half time, because we know that generally if we lead in games, we're pretty good.
It's a fair point there, actually. I'm one of those ones that kind of groans when we attack the Rainham in first half, but it's a fair point. Yeah. Very fair point.
Yeah, I think it might have been Ian Champ or someone said it on Twitter and said, why don't we turn ourselves around and go the other way? But it's that tradition thing, isn't it? We traditionally shoot towards the Rainham in second half, which is all right if you get in at 0-0. But if you end up 2 down, the game's pretty much done, isn't it?
But again, to my point, mate, when we attack the town in first half in games back in the Championship or the old Division 1, Division 2, 3, etc. We attacked 2 Rainhamens essentially.
Yeah, oh yeah, I get that entirely. Yeah, and I remember standing there loads of times in the Championship, the early days of that, because you couldn't get tickets in the Rainham. I remember, I think I abused a certain Peter Crouch in there one night, and he scored the winner, and
yeah,
he got a mention in his autobiography.
It's annoying how nice a good bloke he is. Actually, it has to be said. You want to dislike him.
Yeah, you do try, but he's a funny guy as well, and I just think that interview answer, just to go off on a tangent, is the greatest interview answer I've ever heard, and always will be, to what would you be if you weren't a professional footballer, a virgin. It's the greatest comeback ever. So that is probably a nice place to end this evening's episode. So thank you to Reece, thank you to Jack, as always. Thank you if you're still watching. We appreciate your time, as always, as well. Please keep hitting that like button. Please keep smashing the subscribe button. We're about 25 subscribers away now from 3,000 prize giveaway. I keep saying it. We will be back in what is a busy week, Saturday, for a matchday live against Hollywood FC, as Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, and all of Wrexham's razzmatazz come to town. But until then, enjoy your Friday, and up the Gills.